Yeah.
I'm over there sobbing. I've got tissues.
You were sobbing?
I was.
My gosh, I didn't even know you were crying.
I know. You weren't paying attention to me.
We need a marriage retreat.
Hopefully you were worshiping the Lord as I was. But
I had my eyes closed.
I just appreciate you guys. Thank you backstage. It has been a blessing for me this weekend.
It's easy to take for granted, and I don't know what you guys' experience is. It's easy to take for granted when people are gifted at worship. The music part of it, the lyrical part of it, but even Devin, just kind of the way he was trying to mold and shape how we got started in the mornings. If you're ever with some folks that are up front that are not gifted to do it, then you have a greater appreciation for when you're around people who are. So they're gifted at it. Yeah. Hey, I don't want to forget this. I was thinking about this morning. Jason had these questions available for y'all to have interaction over. Some of you used them, some of you probably didn't. That's totally fine, like he said. But I thought this is a great next date night right here. So I always hate, you come to a retreat or something like this, and there's all kinds of content that comes at you, and it's so easy sometimes just to leave it behind and go back about your business. And I think, well, no, this is actually something that could be useful to you this week. So guys especially, maybe you grab a hold of this thing before you leave. You set up the next time you're going out to dinner next weekend, and you pull this out and say, which 3 do you want to talk about? Okay? There's a good idea. Now all the guys hate me for making them accountable that way. So I am very much a product of the 70s and the 80s, the music of the 70s and the 80s especially. Jason King knows that. And Madonna. You don't need to hear what he just said. But I very much, what's really weird, because there's so many 80s stations, isn't it strange? I know I look out here, a lot of you look like you might be in your 50s or more, like me, okay? But it's like the 80s never left because there's so many 80s stations. I mean, I hear music that still sounds just as relevant now as it did then to me, okay? And so I was in our YMCA. This was actually a couple years ago that this happened. I was in the YMCA, and, the soundtrack comes on. It's like they seem to be playing the same songs all the time. But I found myself singing a song to myself, and I'm in the middle of doing sit-ups, and all of a sudden I just stopped and was actually really listening to what I was singing. For the first time in 40 years, I'd been singing the song to myself and just had not registered to me what I was saying. And some of you remember the Pina Colada song. And you're gonna hate me for this. I mean, again, Devin and them just scraped our heads against the heavens, and now we're coming down into the gutter for a second, okay? Because I've got it here for you. When I heard this and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna start using this with people, because I wonder if they've actually listened to the lyrics of this song. Because it is full of truth and lies. It's loaded, it's like 3 minutes loaded with truth and lies, okay? So we're gonna listen to it. Actually got the lyrics, I know, let's do this, okay? Like, you're not going to be able to get this song out of your head. That's the only thing I hate about it. That's why I almost decided not to do it, because I'm like, this is the last thing they're going to remember from the retreat. But we're going to do it. Because it's actually going to set us up for a good, deep Bible study that we're going to do here for our last time together. Okay, I know it just sounds so contradictory, doesn't it? So, listen to the lyrics. Then I'm going to give you 90 seconds afterwards to turn with each other and say, what are the themes that this song is trying to communicate? And I already told you, some of it's true and some of it's a lie. Okay, what are the themes? See what you can pick up on in re-listening to this song, okay? Guys, go ahead and roll it. Pay attention. All right, you get the idea. Guys, thank you. Amy just leaned over to me, and she's not a product of the 70s and 80s, and she's like, is this the original?
It's not.
So, no, it's like a Hume Lake karaoke version, okay? But it's the one version that had clear lyrics so that you could read them, okay? And it is the original lyrics, okay? So you get the idea. Okay, so turn to each other. What are the themes that are being talked about in that horrible song? Go ahead. Just a couple minutes. Some of y'all are just giddy about it. I cannot wait to hear some of your thoughts. So I would like to hear some. So just quick, maybe throw a hand up just so we can go ahead. What's a theme that you hear? Cheating. That's good. That's good. Good summary. Way to pick up on that. It's definitely about cheating. I mean, one of the crazy things is, and that was kind of my aha moment, which again, how do you miss that across 40 years? But I'm like, wait a minute, they're like cheating on each other with each other. Okay? Okay, so we'll come back to that in a minute. What else? Right? They didn't take any time to study each other. That's good from the weekend, right? Yeah, they're not paying any attention. So like his wife wants to have sex on a beach and he doesn't know about it.
At midnight.
And right. At midnight.
Not me.
They live near some dunes or something, and
maybe if I live by a dune,
maybe it would change
at midnight,
everything.
I would want to have sex.
You gotta move by the sand.
I'm landlocked.
Oh my gosh, so much to talk about with that. Okay, go ahead.
I think just the idea of people just following their feelings and no commitment, just going where they're feelings go. If the feelings aren't there, you just go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's really good. Just if the feelings aren't there, you go somewhere else. So they got married entirely for themselves, whatever their list was. Okay, good. That's a really good one. What? Somebody from over here. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, this could be the theme song for the search for your soulmate. This particular song. Just listen to something else that's...
Always looking for your soulmate. Good. Go ahead.
Grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's right there in front of you. Yep.
The grass is not always greener on the other side. Yeah, which is kind of, I mean, that's the hook at the end, right? And if you go and read comments, so sometimes I do this too. Again, I'm a junkie for listening to people. Like I'll read the comments underneath the YouTube videos. And people are, they're either hating the song for various reasons or they adore it because it's just such an attractive idea that it's right there in front of them. And I just think, again, maybe the biggest lie with that is they would be in 10 years of counseling after this meeting at O'Malley's, okay? With at least the bartender. So they're gonna need help, okay? Because they have just wildly violated trust with each other to discover that everything that they had actually wanted has been sitting there the whole time. Okay, go ahead. Jace.
The stuff that they want is so shallow.
The stuff that they want is shallow.
Hold on, Jason.
Says the man that's never had sex on a beach, apparently. I don't know. Right out here with a lake and everything. It is shallow, though, isn't it? It's very superficial stuff. Okay, that they both want. And it's kind of soulmate, 17-year-old stuff. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. There's nothing wrong with any of those things necessarily, but that's like the extent of what it is they're seeking from each other. What else? Just a couple more. Go ahead.
Yeah, they got stuck in the same old dull routine, which made them look other places. So don't make the routine dull.
Okay, they got stuck in the same old dull routine, which is what made them look. And I even thought about this yesterday when Amy was talking about standing side by side. And look, to me, that's one of the truths that's in it, though, that really resonates. I mean, I think all of us, come to places where we start to feel that way with each other. Yeah, I mean, again, sometimes it's difficult to say that out loud or even to admit it to yourself, but it's like, man, we're just kind of in this rut of doing life side by side. Mm-hmm. But somehow we got to get out of that, right? Okay, one more. You're the last one.
That's good.
That's good. You hear what she said, kind of the pina colada idea that they are wanting to take a vacation from their marriage instead of moving towards one another and digging in. We could have spent the whole weekend just talking about this. Mm-hmm. We kind of did, didn't we? What we've talked about is the answer to it. And what I appreciate about it, again, I go back and forth between getting angry about stuff like this. I'm a maniac in my YMCA. Sometimes I'm storming around angry, right? And they're ready to call the police on me. And other times I'm just like, no, it's beautiful, actually, what's being talked about here, because what they want is companionship, biblical companionship, They really do. That's what's in their heart, is a desire for oneness. That's really what they need. It's what Anna Kendrick was crying about in the video clip that we watched the other day. And actually, George Clooney, as the movie goes on, I'm not saying you should go watch the movie, but I remembered I'd watched it a long time ago, and I was rethinking about it. What he realizes by the end of the movie is that he really wants what Anna Kendrick is crying about, but he can't have it because it's just always going to be all about himself. It's like he can't break free from himself. But there's this common, universal, God put it in us, desire to have substantive companionship. And in fact, he created something called marriage for us to have that between a man and a woman, that we would be able to experience the very thing that everybody's lamenting. Now again, the world's way to deal with it always winds up sending you over a 1,000-foot cliff. Mm-hmm. It just does. And God is just saying, listen, it's a beautiful thing. He continues to pursue us saying, I've got a better way to find life. I've got a better way to find life. Come back here. Come back here and follow this path and see what happens. You'll get what it is that you're actually looking for, but you've got to turn away from your own thoughts about it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. If you've got a Bible, and I haven't said this all weekend, Amy actually said we should have started here. And I really feel in hindsight, this is only the second time we've tried to do this set of talks. If we ever do it again, we will start here. Because I want you to open up your Bibles, if you have them, or you got them on a phone or something, to Genesis chapter 2. And we're going to talk about companionship. If you've got the outline that Jason put on the back table there, if not, go grab one. And we're going to dig into Genesis chapter 2, where God not only creates marriage, but he starts to explain some of the purposes for it. And one of the purposes is for companionship, the kind of companionship that we're talking about here. None of y'all had outlines. I want you to work a little bit this morning. Dig into this. Jason already knows all this. No, it's not a walk of shame. We're at a retreat.
You're not the only one.
No, I mean, we're not really actually here to learn. We're really just trying to retreat. And I totally understand
Where's
that.
the pina coladas?
I actually didn't think there were that many people that were going to have to get up to get them. Just totally waylaid myself with that. Oh, they weren't? Okay. They weren't there when they came in. Put that on the evaluation, y'all. Lack of outlines. Okay. Mm-hmm. John's back there saying, if y'all would give a little more money, we'd be able to supply the outlines in a timely fashion for you.
Stop.
I'm going to stop. Stop. Doesn't say companionship at the top?
Oh.
I think there is a companionship one back there.
We got it.
We're veterans. We're good.
So smoothly.
I know.
play another
it was a great
song.
setup, wasn't it?
Let's play Pina Colada.
It was a great setup.
Do it again. Yeah, bottle flip.
Another bottle flip.
Is this the time for my interpretive dance?
No.
Yes.
No. That's all right.
Oh, gosh.
That's all right. I'm actually glad I said it. Yeah, this is why we don't do evaluations. I'm actually really glad that I did say that, because I want you to have it. So here's the question, as the last few people are sitting down. Thanks for getting those passed out, y'all. It'll help everybody follow this, I think, because there's a lot going on here. It says, how do we avoid simply cohabiting or coexisting together in the same space? I mean, that's, again, what a lot of people feel like marriage is, or it turns into, even for some of us in here. We've admitted that. How do we avoid that being the case? How do we become substantive companions? Well, we need to make 5 intentional ongoing choices, okay? And this is just coming right out of this Genesis passage that we're about to look at, again, where God creates marriage and he says, here's the stuff that marriage is for. And one of the purposes is for companionship. So, in Genesis 2, verse 15, I'm going to go all the way back here. It says, the Lord God took man, who he had just created, and he put him in the Garden of Eden. to work it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, you can surely eat of every tree in this garden, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. So y'all remember that as sort of a setup. And then it says in verse 18, then the Lord God said, it is not good. This is the first time that God ever said something was not good. It's not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. And some translations say a suitable companion. I love that idea, a helper, a suitable companion. There's nobody else for him to be able to hang out with and to be able to have substantive companionship with. There's nobody suitable for that. I will make him a helper fit for him. Okay, so out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The first real work that he gave to him to do. The man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heavens and every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. So he becomes aware for the first time that he doesn't have anyone to have companionship with. Okay? And so, in fact, when you look at the outline, it says, number one, believe God brought you together for his purposes. Believe God brought you together for his purposes. Because Adam comes to the realization that he doesn't have a companion. He doesn't have a helper that's suitable for him. And so what does God do for him? It says in verse 21, the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, he took one of his ribs and he closed up its place with flesh. And then get this, the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. He brought her to the man. There's a friend of mine that I've heard teach this passage a number of times, and I love the way he does this. And he just talks about how there's this scene where Adam is somewhere, and God brings Eve to him and just says, here you go, Adam. What do you think of that? Presents her. He brought her to the man. And again, who knows what that looked like, but in some way, he presented her to him. He's the one that brought them together. He's the one that brought them together. I wrote this down to myself this morning, even rethinking it for myself, and I want us to think about it. What role did God play in bringing you two together? Do you ever think about that? I mean, where we're starting here is we're making a theological statement. We're saying something about what we believe about God with this whole starting point. For Adam, God brought Eve to him. Do you believe that God brought you together? Or is it just something, and we need to be not careful not to too quickly answer that. Because the first time that I ever thought about this, I just thought, well, mostly I think I did it. I mean, I had my list of things that I was interested in. I have always been the one that chose who it was that I was going to date or pursue to date. Amy, I mean, didn't you feel similarly throughout your dating life that you were kind of in charge of that? Yeah. I mean, but it never actually would have dawned on me that God is the one who had orchestrated the events to bring about me even seeing Amy in the first place. That that what I'm saying when I say that I believe that God brought us together is that I'm trusting that God is sovereign over all the things that happen in the universe. And again, this is as mind-blowing as the idea of the Trinity, which we talked about on the first night, but that I have free will and I do get to make choices, and yet God is sovereign over the whole game. He's sovereign over everything that happens, and nothing happens that he's not allowing to happen. Do you believe that God brought you together? See, this is so relevant. Again, some of you are just like, yeah, whatever. No, because this is the starting point for all the other stuff. Amy said this to me this morning when we were preparing. She's like, this is the starting point for everything that we've talked about this weekend. Kurt did it in his seminar. Same kind of thing. It's the starting point, what you believe about God and his involvement in bringing you together ends up setting the trajectory for the rest of your relationship. And reminding ourselves of that is what gives us the strength, the courage to keep stepping back in and say, well, we're gonna stay in this for the long haul because God is the one that brought it about in the first place for us. There was this quote that I came across years ago from C.S. Lewis. It was the only thing that I cared about being in our program at our wedding, okay? Which Amy graciously allowed me to put in there. So he's talking about friendship, okay? C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Four Loves, where he's talking about different kinds of friendship. And he said, in friendship, we think we've chosen our peers. And think about this in the context of marriage. We think we've chosen our peers. But in reality, a few years difference in the dates of our births, a few more miles between certain houses, the choice of one university instead of another, posting to different military regiments, the accident of a topic being raised or not raised at a first meeting, any of these chances might have kept us apart. Think about that. But for a Christian, there are, strictly speaking, no chances. A secret master of the ceremonies has been at work. Christ, who said to his disciples, you have not chosen me, but I chose you, can truly say to every group of Christian friends, and I'd say every group of Christian spouses, you've not chosen one another, but I have chosen you for one another. Isn't that good? Don't you wish you could go back to your wedding day and have this in your program like I did? Wow, the first time I read that, it was one of those moments that just kind of was like a bucket of ice water in my face, again, in a humbling way. And I was thinking that I've been in charge of this, and yet, no, actually, God is the one that brings us together. For companionship to be able to happen and for it to be sustained, we have to believe that God is the one that brought us together. But what else, Aim? What's the second one?
Yeah, so we can believe that. We can know that God is behind that. But then what do we do with it? So, number 2, receive your spouse as God's companion for you. We can believe all day that, yeah, there is a master of the ceremonies behind us getting together. But what am I going to do in those moments when I'm not getting my way, when I'm frustrated? Am I going to still choose to receive Ed as this gift given to me by God? So in here it says, Adam enthusiastically received Eve because he trusted God, not because of Eve's performance. So the word says, then the man said, this at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She's just like me. She's not like an animal. She's just like me. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. So what I just love about this is that he's like, yes, someone just like me. And he comes and he receives her. Maybe it was a chest bump. Maybe it was a full embrace hug. I don't know. But Adam just says, it's not because, you know what, Eve? It's not because you look a certain way, you have given me so many children, you make this much money.
Cook right food.
Cook the right food, have sex this many times. He just says, no, Eve, like, you are a gift from God. And I embrace you and I receive you, not because of what you've done, but because you're this gift. And so I think so many times, like how many times do I get frustrated with Ed and I kind of say, you know what, I'll love you or I will respect you when? And it's like, no, I'm going to trust that this is God's perfect gift for me, no matter what he does. But...
Or I'll receive you as long as you keep, like
yes.
she said, as long as you keep meeting the checklist of things that I want my life to look like. But if that changes in any way, then I'm going to wind up at O'Malley's.
Right, which it basically changed the second we get home from the honeymoon, right? Like it didn't.
Or sooner.
Yes. It doesn't
really
take long for us to be like, wait a second, this isn't a perfect gift for me. A perfect gift for me would do and bring out my list. So why does that happen? What's going on in our marriages where we start to feel like no longer is this a perfect gift? So as you keep reading, we are different people. We come from very different backgrounds. Ed and I have talked about this. I come from from Minneapolis, where it's beautiful and it's green and it smells like Starbucks, and I go camping with my dad in the Boundary Waters every summer. And Ed comes from the steel plants of Cleveland. We came from very, very different places that have caused some significant tension within our marriage.
It really, I was rethinking about this. You know, we talked about Amy crying when she was around lakes. I remember the first time that I tried to take her up to this one stretch along Lake Erie that we used to go hang out all the time in high school. It was the first time I took her up there. And as we're driving by this, what at the time was a broken down steel plant along the lake, I started to get emotional. Like I really did. I was home. And this was home to me. And again, it's steel and it's rugged and it's like, and she looked, I remember us talking about it. I'm like, what do you think? And she was just like,
this is terrible.
It's awful.
It was terrible.
And I was a little bit hurt. I mean, again, it sounds funny now, but it's like, no, they're like, this is my home. This is my worldview. This is the way I do life.
Yeah, so very different. But what about lights? How do you feel about lights?
How do I feel about lights?
Being left on, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that was a very disturbing reality, besides the fact that we found out we were coming from different places, is you start living together. And so when we first got married especially, it seemed like every time I came home from wherever I was, every light in the house was on, okay? And so the first thing I would do, because we're a shoes-off family, first thing I would do is take my shoes off as I come in, and then I'm just turning off lights. It's just like, that's my re-entry back into the home at the end of any kind of a day, is I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to turn off lights. Because in my home, when lights were left on, okay, that was grounds for a spanking or worse. It's like, seriously, I mean, because you're wasting money, okay? Any of that kind of wasteful stuff growing up in the 70s and 80s was grounds for some kind of a punishment. And so, you know, these are triggering events for me, seeing the lights left on as I'm going through the house.
But then I enter the room, and I just come, and I start flicking them back on.
She's turning them back on.
Because for me, a dark house is depressing. It's, thank you, I am getting head nods from multiple ladies.
She never had to pay any bills. Growing up, she's probably not paying anything now, is she?
But it literally changes my mood in my day if it is dark and dreary. We don't have sunshine like California 24/7. We have a lot of dark days, and I need the lights on.
And I love being in the shadows, y'all. I just do. I really do. I do. I don't want the lights on all the time. I leave the lights off in the shower. I leave the lights off in the kitchen when I'm working in there. And listen, so it seems so silly. We fought about that. Like, that was the kind of stuff that immediately as I'm going through the house, and I'm just thinking, I had no idea. Seriously, no idea this is what I was going to sign up for. Remember the first time I went up to her family's house, okay, and this is the kind of stuff you don't ever even notice. I never had paid attention to this before. I go in her family's house after we got married, and I'm like, her family's committed to being a lighthouse for all 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. They got lights on all over the place. And it's like, how did I not notice this before? And it grates me. It grates me.
It is.
So just a crazy difference like that.
Yeah, we're so different.
This, we always bring this out with people, okay? I feel like we've gotten over this a little bit. But early on, man, I get toothpaste, things like this, and you can already see kind of the condition that this one is in. I worked this thing, you guys, until, and I'm kind of curious to see how you feel about this. I get that all the way down to there. And then Jason, seriously, they make this really hard at the top here. I will squeeze that to try to get that last bit. And I come in the bathroom, and this is what I see.
This stuff costs $1, okay? This is not even like the nice toothpaste. I'll squeeze, I'll go. You know, like, I don't have time in my life to sit and work a toothpaste bottle, people. There are more important things to do.
I would come into the bathroom and see that toothpaste thing just mangled in the middle of it. And it would bother me. It just would irk me. And so there's so many things like that. I mean, you know, it's just that silly stuff. We're all even laughing about it right now because you know what your stuff is like that. It's just differences, right? In the way that you see things, the way you eat at the table, the way you manage life. And none of that stuff gets worked out before you get married. And in fact, in some cases, you're hiding that stuff from each other, but in others, it's been in plain sight. You just didn't see it the whole time, right? Because if you did, maybe nobody would ever get married, okay? But again, in God's sovereignty, he brings us together knowing that those differences, those little annoying differences, and even the bigger ones of just what your worldview is. And guys, this is where it gets messy. Because you know what all that silly stuff is called in a divorce court? There may have been something that kind of finally set us over the edge, okay, that was bigger or felt bigger. But what's lying underneath all of that is all these what we call irreconcilable differences. It's just all the annoyances. It's the lights on. It's the toothpaste being handled a certain way. It's the pile of underwear next to the bed. It's what are we going to do on weekends and vacations, right? And all that stuff just adds up when we're fighting it and trying to change each other with it.
So we just never imagined, I think, when we're talking about receiving our spouse, we just never imagined this pile of stuff that we would have to work through. We never imagined how selfish the other person was going to be. And then all of a sudden, someone holds up a mirror in front of your face, and then you start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm really selfish too. So it's really hard to receive each other when we're wading through this. It's hard to see this perfect gift that God is saying, I have given this to you. Enjoy it. So
Amy and I lived in a duplex when we first got married, and there was a couple next door to us fighting. They fought all the time through the walls, which is great when you first get married because you can sit in judgment, listening to them fight and say, we're doing great over here. And one time, I was just kind of trying to be a little funny with Amy, but I said, you know what, you're the luckiest girl in the world. This is the first year we were married. You're the luckiest girl in the world because I'm the easiest guy in the world to live with.
Right?
Which it wasn't that, I didn't think it was that funny.
You were being serious.
Little bit. I was actually a little more serious than I probably care to admit. I was, but I kind of also just wanted to see what she would do with it. And she said, I've never forgotten this. She said, sure you are, when you're all by yourself. And I was like, oh. But I've never forgotten that, y'all. I've said that in front of thousands of people because I'm like, that is really profound, Amy. I mean, she came up with that without any articles getting sent to her. I'm like, that is so true, though, isn't it? We're all the easiest people in the world to get along with when we're all by ourselves. But that goes against the definition of being married, right? And then we never imagine how different we are and how selfish we might be, but never imagine that I might be mistreated in some way. And sometimes this means like literal abuse, okay, that some of us have experienced. But it's less than that too. It's just we just are mean to each other, like we talked about this week. I never thought that this person would be mean to me or talk to me like that. And so all of this stuff winds up adding up to receive you. And that's why I grew up in a home and watching parents, and again, just seeing this with friends' parents and through the years of people who maybe stay together, but they just do it in a tolerating kind of a way. You know, Amy talked about it, it's an embracing. Well, plenty of people just go through life saying, I'll stay with you. It's grudging. It's a grind. And God says, well, if you really want to be companions, you got to believe that I brought you together. But you also have to be able to look at each other and receive that pile of differences and the pile of selfishness that comes. You don't have to receive mistreatment. I don't ever want to go there and say that. That needs to be checked. But this might come with the package, okay? That we got to work through this. We've got to bring this stuff to God together, and we've got to become something different together that we wouldn't become on our own. But this is part of the receiving. All the differences and the messiness and stuff that we didn't expect. So have you received each other? Wow, again, maybe that's the moment for the weekend, is just to say, I don't know if I've ever actually said that I joyfully receive you as God's gift to me. I joyfully receive you as God's gift to me.
I like this quote. It says, we never know whom we marry. We just think we do, or even if we first marry the right person, just give it a while and he or she will change. The primary challenge of marriage is learning how to love and care for the stranger to whom you find yourself married. And I even
good.
think about how Eric Tanis last night had said how it's a constant getting to know Donna as she changes. And again, stranger is a pretty harsh word in here, or a dramatic word, but it's like, I'm changing, and Ed needs to continue to get to know the person that I'm changing into, and vice versa.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, back to the text, and you know where this is leading. He's brought her to him, believed that they brought him together. He receives her. And then look at verse 24 and 25. And y'all know these verses. Kurt went over them the other day. This is where marriage is created. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. So what's the third one? We're going to go through these pretty quick here, but let's get through them. To leave behind old ways of life, especially parents and family of origin. Leave means to break dependence on other things. So it's literally going and setting up something new, okay? And it seems like it's the most accessible in terms of being able to understand. Of course, you have to leave. But you know what? A lot of problems in marriage wind up being just being a result of not leaving well, because we're still too connected to home base, or we're still being affected by a previous spouse in a way that's messing up our ability to leave well and start something new together. Maybe it's parents or friends or old habits or patterns, right? It's just something else that's getting in the way of us being able to leave and set up something new. And Amy, you talk about this all the time.
Yeah, so when our first maybe 5 years of marriage, it's a little different for us because both our families live far away. We don't have weekly or monthly interactions with them. But when we would go home, we would both find ourselves, and I mentioned this earlier this weekend, slipping into these old patterns. So we got married, we had a child right away, and we would go home, and all of a sudden I would find myself consumed with worrying about how my parents are viewing us. Am I a good wife? Am I a good mom? Am I kind of doing things right with the grandparents? Like my focus went from Ed to trying to please my parents like I was 16 years old again, and it caused some major tension between us. And the same thing with Ed. We would go home, and because his home life was so chaotic, he would just shut down. That's how he had to survive, was just kind of shut down. But in the midst of him shutting down, he kind of shut me and the kids out as well. So it's as we have to leave well, is what does it mean to break that, even those mental patterns that we have with our family of origin? And even I would say for those of you that have grown kids, what is it like to really release your kids and let them leave well and not try and hold on to this? You guys, I'm already feeling it. Our 20-year-old, I'm scared to death that he's going to go marry some crazy woman, and I'm not going to be able to let go of him. So there's a lot in that, but what does it mean to leave well, and what does it mean to even release our kids and let them leave well when they grow up?
Yeah. So leave, and look at number 4. Cleave to your spouse. Cleave to your spouse. Go ahead, Amy, are you doing that one?
Yes, I'm sorry. Eric was calling.
Your
Our
20-year-old
oldest was
just called
calling.
my phone. He's probably like, Mom, I found this girl while you were gone. I found this girl at O'Malley's. Yo, that's what we're going home to.
Oh my gosh. So number 4, we need to cleave to our spouse. And really, there is not much new to say here, because I really do feel like what cleaving was those 10 points that we gave. It's how do we become each other's best friend. Cleave means to bind to form a permanent bond. It's to become one flesh, which Ed is going to talk about in the next point. But it's this super gluing binding together, and it happens by studying each other, by asking for forgiveness, by going through some hard times and becoming stronger on the other side. It's becoming each other's best friend, so cleaving to each other.
Yeah, and so, again, a great question to ask each other even, is there anything in our life right now that you feel like I'm cleaving to more than you?
Yeah.
Is there anything in our life, our vocational life, our friend life, our kid life that's getting in the way of us being able to have that bond together? That's just a great follow-up question. Then the last one is to weave together as one flesh. So one flesh is not just about sex. Kurt talked about this for all of us that were in there yesterday. God designed marriage so that there could be one person in the world with whom you are naked, fully known, and fully accepted, just like you can be with him. Naked physically. And I think about this all the time whenever I'm standing up here in front of a group. I mean, I love that there was no email sent out, but I love that we just have an understanding that everyone was going to wear clothes in here this morning. That just kind of doesn't matter what state you're in, we just kind of pass that along. And there's a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about why that's a good thing. But it's because I'm not supposed to be physically vulnerable with all of you. God gave me one person that I'm supposed to be physically vulnerable with, and I'm supposed to also, though, be emotionally vulnerable with her. Spiritually vulnerable with her, mentally vulnerable with her. The crazy thing is, and the horrible thing is that the person that you are most naked with can often be the one that hurts you the most, right? That's the messy thing about it is, yeah, we've been naked with each other and we've hurt each other. And I love that it says that Adam and Eve were naked and they were unashamed. But you know what? The whole rest of the Bible, you know what happens in Genesis chapter 3 is when the dumpster fire starts. And from that point forward, folks are full of all kinds of shame and are hurting each other. And what part of what the cross does and what the gospel does is it says we can start that all over again. You can experience something of what it was intended to be, even in the midst of your brokenness through the cross, of being fully transparent with one another. I've given you one person that even if you don't have that with other people, that kind of transparency and vulnerability, you at least have one person to keep working that out with. And that's what it's all about. So, we got to stop. Here's what I'd like you to do just so we can land this plane, Jason, then you can come up, okay? Just take 2 minutes with each other just to kind of close out what we've been doing here. I know we kind of flew through that, but all this is about companionship. You can't have companionship unless you believe God brought you together and you receive each other and you intentionally leave to set up something new and you start to cleave together across the lifetime, the studying, everything that Amy just talked about, in an atmosphere of transparency, where oneness has a chance to happen. That's where companionship really happens and why God set marriage up the way he set it up. So if you look at those 5, which is the one that maybe you need to give attention to with each other? Again, I don't want to end on a negative note, but is there something in there that even as you're listening in the midst of your mind being full of so many other things and getting ready to get out of here, is there something that you just need to say, you know what, let's keep talking about this one with each other? Weave. That was a rhyming word imposed on the text. It's one flesh. Weave together as one flesh. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to set my watch 2 minutes. Jason, give me some time back for the handout situation.